On a scale of 1 to 10, how interested are you in understanding the respective positions for and against the impeachment of Donald Trump according to the constitutional legal experts? Scale of 1 to 10, 5 being the highest.
It's lower than 5.
Well, this is a sponsored video as well, so dinner's on me! Booyah!
Not bad.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, I make vlogs. And in my last video, I did one of my breakdowns of Representative Matt Gaetz cross-examining some of the constitutional experts in the context of Trump's impeachment inquiry. And I noticed a few comments to the effect that people were expecting more of an expose of the respective positions of those constitutional legal experts. Incidentally, if you haven't seen that video, I'm going to link it right here and also post a link to it at the end of this video. Now, the purpose of that video wasn't really to get into the substance of the respective arguments for and against the impeachment as presented by those constitutional legal experts. It was really more to discuss the cross-examination of the expert witnesses themselves and to discuss certain considerations that have to go into prepping and examining expert witnesses. Now that that's been done, I think it is in fact an opportune time to discuss the substance of the arguments put forth in particular by Feldman and Turley. But first, I must thank and plug my sponsor. It takes a certain degree of courage to even want to sponsor a channel such as mine, but given the legal nature of my channel, it is all the more fitting for the sponsor, SuttonDigitalMarketing.com. From what I'm told, they've helped over 150 attorneys reach the #1 Google ranking for over 800 keywords. Sutton Digital Marketing guarantees a 10% increase in website traffic in the first 16 weeks, or they will provide the SEO for free. I am told that their rates are reasonable, and in any event, you'll get 50% off your first month if you use the code SuttonDigitalMarketing.com/Viva. That's SuttonDigitalMarketing.com/Viva. And incidentally, if anybody wants to watch the first sponsored video I did illustrating all of the risks and perils that goes into accepting a sponsorship, I'm going to link that video right here. And for those of you who are going to call me a shill, I don't always shill, but when I do, I shill ethically. This is apple juice. All right, back to the video. Trump impeachment inquiry hearings. We have heard witnesses over the last couple of weeks. I've made a few videos on that, but I'll link the Trump impeachment playlist right here. We heard witnesses of fact testify, and the other day we heard the constitutional legal expert witnesses testify on law. And the object of their testimony was, are the facts as we currently understand them today sufficient to warrant articles of impeachment against the president? In my last video, I talked about the need for the appearance of objectivity of any expert testifying on a subject. And to that end, I dissected why it was that Representative Matt Gaetz was going after the expert witnesses for having contributed to the campaigns of Obama, Elizabeth Warren, and Hillary Clinton.
Professor Carlin, you gave $2,000, or you gave $1,000 to Elizabeth Warren, right?
I believe so.
You gave $1,200 bucks to Barack Obama,
I have no reason to question that.
and you gave $2,000 to Hillary Clinton.
That's correct.
Why so much more for Hillary than the other two?
Because I've been giving a lot of money to charity recently because of all of the poor people in the United States.
Well, those aren't the only folks you've been given to.
But that is the politics side of things, which doesn't necessarily impact the substance of the law. And that's an important thing for people to appreciate in law, politics, and in life. One can attack their ideological adversaries' intentions, and they may in fact have good cause to do it, but that doesn't necessarily undermine the validity of the substance of the arguments themselves. So let's get into the substance of those arguments.
Professor Feldman, you were somewhat of an impeachment skeptic at the time of the release of the Mueller report, were you not?
I was.
What's changed for you, sir?
What changed for me was the revelation of the July 25th call and then the evidence that emerged subsequently of the President of the United States, in a format where he was heard by others and now known to the whole public, openly abused his office by seeking a personal advantage in order to get himself reelected and act against the national security of the United States. And that is precisely the situation that the framers anticipated. Someday, we will no longer be alive, and we'll go wherever it is we go, the good place or the other place, and we may meet there, Madison and Hamilton, and they will ask us, when the President of the United States acted to corrupt the structure of the Republic, what did you do? And our answer to that question must be that we followed the guidance of the framers, and it must be that if the evidence supports that conclusion, that the House of Representatives moves to impeach him.
This is a packed statement with multiple elements to it that we need to break down in order to fully understand. Agree or disagree with it, the argument goes as follows. Impeachment is warranted because Donald Trump, 1, abused of his position in office.
Openly abused his office
by seeking a personal advantage to get reelected,
by seeking a personal advantage in order to get himself reelected,
and act against the national security of the United States.
and act against the national security of the United States.
And when I say it's a packed statement with multiple elements, that is to say that any one element alone would be insufficient as it is worded. Now, it's unclear which of these three conditions need to be met in order for there to be impeachment, but presumably at least two of them. Abuse of his office as president, either for personal gain or to act against the national security of the United States. And according to Feldman, Trump did all of this in his conversation with the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. Abuse of his office as president in order to withhold the $400 million in military aid, for personal benefit in order to get dirt on a political rival, and that this runs against the national security of the United States. Agree or disagree with it? That is Feldman's opinion as a constitutional and legal scholar.
I believe that impeachment is warranted whenever the president abuses his power for personal benefit or to corrupt the democratic process.
Feldman believes that impeachment is warranted whenever the president abuses his power for personal benefit or to corrupt the democratic process. Now, the lawyer in me is immediately drawn to the highly subjective terms used in that qualification. People often take language for granted, but the term abuse is in fact a highly subjective term. Hey Siri, what does abuse mean?
As a verb, it means use something to bad effect or for a bad purpose misuse.
To use something for a bad effect or for a bad purpose. It is apparent from the definition that the term abuse is itself a fundamentally subjective term. The definition is going to vary from one person to another. One person's use is another person's abuse. The criteria of for personal benefit also is very subjective. I've discussed this in previous videos. It's not only very subjective, it is also not mutually exclusive with national interest. Again, agree or disagree with them, it's just important to understand the argument. A lot of people are going to say that this definition of impeachment effectively renders the Democratic Party investigation proof, because by definition, investigating your political adversaries would be a personal benefit. That said, in order to be fair to the counter-argument would presumably be that there are proper channels to do it, and that strong-arming a foreign president into digging up dirt is not the right way to do it. But all of this discussion highlights the essence of the problem, that these are fundamentally subjective interpretations of the fact pattern as we currently understand them. And if this is the new norm as to what it takes to impeach a president, the bar is going to be set so low that it is going to be impossible for future governments to govern in the future. What? No future president is going to be able to serve as president without being held hostage to the House and the Senate. And this is effectively where the legal scholar Turley goes with his explanation, which we'll get into right now.
How does this trend comport with how the founders understood impeachment should operate?
Well, I believe that the founders certainly had aspirations that we would come together as a people, but they didn't have any delusions. It certainly was not something that they achieved in their own lifetime. I think that the greater thing I would point to is the 7 Republicans in the Johnson impeachment. And everyone often talks about one of the senators, but not this one. And that's Lyman Trumbull, who was a fantastic senator. He became a great advocate for civil liberties. You have to understand that most of these senators, when it was said that they jumped into their political graves, it was true. Most of their political careers ended. They knew they would end because of the animosity of the period. Trumbull said the following: once this set the example of impeaching a president for what, when the excitement of the hour shall have subsided, will be regarded as insufficient causes, no future president will be safe who happens to differ from the majority of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. He said, I tremble for the future of my country. I cannot be an instrument to produce such a result, and at the hazard of the ties, even of friendship and affection, till calmer times shall do justice to my motives, no alternatives are left to me. And he proceeded to give the vote that ended his career.
Alright, and if this entire highly divisive saga is good for one thing, it is learning history. Mark Twain, history doesn't repeat itself, but it tends to rhyme. I've discussed Andrew Johnson in previous vlogs, him being one of the 2 presidents who was impeached, but never convicted. And I mentioned that Andrew Johnson escaped conviction by 1 vote in the Senate. And while it comes down to 1 vote, it is nonetheless to say that everyone who voted nay on convicting Johnson was the deciding vote. And here Turley is describing the political climate at the time, which sounds oddly like the political climate today. And being cautiously optimistic, I have no doubt that in due time, time healing all wounds, people are going to look back at this era and say, man, we got a little out of hand during that time. I can appreciate a great many people saying, no, that's never going to happen. But I would respectfully suggest that that is the sentiment that one has when they are deep in the valley. When you're in the depths of the valley, it feels like you're being swallowed up by the mountains. But when you get to the summit of the mountain, you look down and you say, wow, that really wasn't that deep, now was it? I hear a dog. All right, this is, get over here, Bogey. This is Bogey, the other vlog dog. 191 pounds of pure beef. Technically not beef at all, actually. What am I talking about? Alright, so with that said, Turley is describing the political climate at the time of the Johnson impeachment. And Turley is talking about a Senator Trumbull, Trumbull, who knew that by voting nay against the conviction of Andrew Johnson was effectively sealing his political fate. Now, I don't want to be accused of mischaracterizing what Turley said, so I'm just going to let you listen to his words because they're quite eloquent.
You can't wait for calmer times. The time for you is now. And I would say that what Trumbull said has even more bearing today, because I believe that this is much like the Johnson impeachment. It's manufactured until you build a record. I'm not saying you can't build a record, but you can't do it like this, and you can't impeach a president like this.
And then we get into Representative Ken Buck's examination of Turley. And it is what I have referred to in previous vlogs as an examination of a friendly witness. We know that the two are aligned ideologically or politically as far as the impeachment inquiry goes. The questions are what I would call loaded questions, and that we know exactly what point Buckley is trying to make. And Buckley goes through a series of past presidents asking Turley if, according to the definition provided for by Feldman, would these presidents have committed impeachable offenses? And it's obvious what he's getting at. According to the bar as set by Feldman's theory, pretty much every past president would have committed an impeachable offense.
Professor Turley, I want to direct these first few questions to you. The other three witnesses have identified this amorphous standard for impeaching a president. They've said that if a president abuses his power for personal or political gain, it's impeachable conduct. You agree with me?
Not the way it's been stated. Well, there's been so many different standards. One of them was attempting to abuse office.
Okay.
I'm not even sure how to recognize that, let alone define it.
So let me go with a few examples and see if you agree with me. Lyndon Johnson directed the Central Intelligence Agency to place a spy in Barry Goldwater's campaign. That spy got advanced copies of speeches and other strategy, delivered that to the Johnson campaign. Would that be impeachable conduct according to the other panelists?
Oh, well, it sweeps pretty broadly, so I assume so.
How about when President Johnson put a wiretap on Goldwater's campaign plane?
Well, I can't exclude anything under that definition.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he was president, directed the IRS to conduct audits of his political enemies. How about when President Kennedy directed his brother, Robert Kennedy, to deport one of his mistresses as an East German spy? How about when he directed the FBI to use wiretaps on congressional staffers who opposed him politically? When Barack Obama directed or made a finding that the Senate was in recess and appointed people to the National Labor Relations Board and lost 9-0, Ruth Bader Ginsburg voted against the president on this issue.
I'm afraid you'd have to direct it to others, but I don't see any exclusions under their definition.
How about when Abraham Lincoln arrested legislators in Maryland so that they wouldn't convene to secede from the Union? Would that have been an abuse of power for political benefit?
Well, it could be under that definition.
And I know that a great many are going to call us a whataboutism. We're not here to talk about any of the conduct of past presidents. And that others are going to say, you can't write this off as a whataboutism. This is about applying a rule equally to see if the rule makes sense. And as far as my reading goes, this is not so much about past presidents as it would be about future presidents. And from the line of questioning, it becomes abundantly clear that if this is going to be the new bar, no future president is going to be able to govern.
Can you name a single president in the history of the United States, save President Harrison, who died 32 days after his inauguration, that would not have met the standard of impeachment for our friends here?
I would hope to God James Madison would escape. Otherwise, a lifetime of academic work would be shredded. Once again, I can't exclude many of these acts.
Isn't what you and I and many others are afraid of is that the standard that your friends to the right of you, and not politically, but to the right of you sitting on there, that your friends have decided that the bar is so low that when we have a Democrat president in office and a Republican House and a Republican Senate, we're going to be going through this whole scenario again in a way that really puts the country at risk.
So that is the exposé of the diverging opinions of the constitutional legal scholars as relates to whether or not there are grounds for impeachment. And it's something I've said in previous videos, and it's something we often hear from other lawyers, that impeachment means whatever Congress says it means. And while that may be technically true by the strict black and white letter of the law, the reality is that when something means anything, it ends up meaning nothing. And above and beyond Mark Twain's great quote, I have another one by Kierkegaard, life can only be understood backwards, yet it must be lived forwards. Once the bar gets lowered, it is very difficult to raise that bar again. And this actually goes back to a few videos I made about the Canadian comic Mike Ward, who was ordered to pay $35,000 in damages by the Quebec Human Rights Tribunal as a result of jokes he made about a celebrity who was a minor at the time that suffered from a handicap. Unless the Supreme Court of Canada overturns that decision, which was confirmed by the Court of Appeal, that is now the new bar in Canada. And it's one of those perfect situations where as much as you may not like what's going on, you may dislike where it leads even more. As relates to comedy in Canada, given this new standard, the question is going to be what's next? And if the standard for impeaching a president is going to be in accordance with the theory put forward by Feldman, what is going to happen to future presidents? Above and beyond all of the passions of the time and the divisive nature of politics, it is a fantastic opportunity to revisit history. History does not repeat, but it definitely tends to rhyme, and it is certainly rhyming now. With that said, if you like my videos and my content, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below. I thank my sponsors for the sponsors, but if anybody wants to support the channel, there's a PayPal link and merch links in the comment section below. There's a PayPal link up in the banner on the channel. But above all that, if you just share my videos, tweet them out at somebody who you think might appreciate them, I greatly appreciate it. And as a distraction from politics, I'm going to link a video to the biggest pike I ever caught right here. And now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!